Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show, ladies and gentlemen. I told you guys it's Tobago Thursday, and today we're going to head across to Tobago and chat with Veterinarian, President-elect of TNT Vet Association, Dr. Paul Crooks. Good morning to you, Dr. Crooks.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone at TTT, and good morning to the population of Trinidad and Tobago.
Now, Doc, we want to find out how have the services of the vet, have they changed and been affected by COVID-19, especially in Tobago during this pandemic?
Oh, there are so many ways we've been affected. So we could take one at a time. But we could begin with, I want to say, increased demand, let's put it like that, of veterinary pharmaceuticals to be used in humans, where we have clients, as we all know about the ivermectin, and the misinformation that's been spreading all over social media. A lot of our clients have been trying to source ivermectin for use on themselves or in their families for the prevention and or treatment of COVID-19, even though what we have would be veterinary pharmaceuticals. Now, it's important to distinguish. While the medicines that are used in human medicine and animal medicine are often similar or the same, when you buy a tablet or an injectable solution, there are inactive ingredients. So you have the main ingredient that does what it ought to do in the body, as well as other ingredients that when you buy a 50 milligram capsule, you actually get 200 milligrams of product. There are other things in there, maybe a little bit of sugar, some other chemicals that might help with absorption and so on.
Okay.
The truth is that when a drug is formulated for use in a cow, and then a human takes it, we don't know at any point in time as the vets what those inert ingredients or other ingredients may be, and we don't know the impact or potential impacts in any person who takes those medicines. So when we say things to people like, you cannot use horse ivermectin to try to treat COVID, maybe your physician might recommend it as much as there's no data to back it up, but then you can get human ivermectin for that purpose. Additionally, the purity standards may not be there or the standards made for checking the quality or purity of human grade medicine is not necessarily the same for veterinary formulations. So there are those risks.
Right.
First
But
of all,
has there been a challenge in terms of accessing medication on a whole?
So 100%, that's a second challenge that we're dealing with. So COVID has affected supplies for every vet. No question about it. For every producer, every wholesaler, every retailer, it's been a problem. It means that we've had to pivot from certain common medicines that we would use to, let's say, perform surgeries. We'd have to look for alternative medicines to knock out the animals to perform a surgery. Clients have grown accustomed to certain lower rates for surgical procedures and that sort of thing, depending on which vets they go to. The truth is that all vets are going to have to move towards more expensive options. Even the medicines that were used in the past, the cheaper medicines that were used in the past, those formulations are no longer available, but we're buying from different suppliers. We're importing from different manufacturers. So it means that not only is there limited drug availability, but when the drugs do come, the prices are going up. And that means that, unfortunately, we're going to have generally increased prices for procedures. And it also means that where there were charitable efforts or reduced cost efforts for, let's say, spay and neuters of stray animals, that's simply not something that's realistic or attainable at the moment.
Very interesting so basically the cheaper stuff that usually is available is becoming more scarce, and the only thing that's available is the more expensive medication, is what you're saying.
Unfortunately, yes, that's turned out to be the reality.
Oh boy.
We won't get into why that may be the case, but that's what's been happening.
All right. Tell me about the treatment of livestock, because I know, I mean, vets don't just treat household animals, and personal pets and stuff like that, but you also treat with farmers who would be rearing livestock and stuff like that. How has that part of the business been affected?
Right. So one of the most important things, or most important shifts we've made to our paradigm, and it's one that we're still trying to get accustomed to, is the idea of telemedicine. So we constantly have been asking clients throughout the pandemic to call first. Right. And in many instances, use social media, use messaging, instant messaging to perhaps send a video, send pictures, because at this point, the pivot that has been made, including in livestock medicine, is evaluate first, determine how necessary it is that a vet comes by. There are times where farmers are not even aware of what they can do. Recently, I had a farmer call me at 10 p.m. because he saw in his sheep, a first-time mother, that the lamb was stuck. And through discussion with him, he was able to deliver this lamb from a first-time mother giving birth. He was able to deliver this lamb without me necessarily going by. So I was able to go by the next day to examine her and make sure everything is okay. But there's now that increased uptake of telemedicine, where people are calling, WhatsApping, and we are getting videos and images to guide and decide when it's necessary for a veterinarian to intervene.
Would you say, Doc, that as a community, that generally you guys have had to go more digital? Like you're saying that people have been WhatsApping you and stuff, but is that a general practice that has taken place since the pandemic started?
100%. And I'll say one other stressor that we have, among many others, we have clients who are not necessarily paying the most attention to COVID guidelines, who are not socially distancing, who are not wearing their masks, who are crowding. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is we do need to find ways to avoid contact. And across the board, vets have been asking clients to make appointments. They've been limiting the number of persons in the office at one point in time. And many vets have been asking people to call first. In fact, I would say it's across the board that vets have been asking clients to call first, and then they will decide whether or not the patient should be seen and how that will be done. So it is a much more common practice. And part of the reason is because many clients are so resistant to follow COVID guidelines. Many clients are coming into our office still to this day, and we have to remind them to wear their masks or to fix their masks properly so that their noses and mouths are covered, to sanitize, and so on.
Doctor, this may seem like a silly question, right? But just bear with me here. With regards to those health guidelines being not followed as adequately as they ought to be, do we have a risk factor when it comes to animals catching COVID?
That's a really good question. So the truth is that there is evidence that shows that dogs get infected with COVID. Up to about 20% of dogs in different studies around the world have had antibodies to COVID-19, which suggests that they were infected and recovered. However, most dogs never show any clinical signs, and if they do, it would be very similar to humans. But there's still a lot of studies going on. Very recently, I think last week, it was found that there are wild deer populations that have COVID in the United States, and it's possible that these deer are a reservoir so that people who go hunting may contract COVID from interaction with the wild deer. However, as it stands, there's no evidence that dogs can transmit COVID to humans. There's been no evidence outside of laboratory settings that any animal has transmitted COVID to humans as far as we're aware. That doesn't mean it's impossible. So our recommendation is if a person or family is isolated because of COVID-19, their animals should also be isolated. And if a client knows he or she is positive or knows that they are awaiting results or knows that they are showing signs of COVID-19, they should inform the vet of that.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning and for sharing that information. I didn't even think about it before this conversation that there's a possibility that animals could be getting it, and possibly, I guess, like you said, in the case of the deer in the States, sharing it as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Crooks, for joining us this morning and for sharing this information with us.
Thank you all for having me.
Not a problem. Enjoy the rest of your day. As the president-elect of the TNT Vet Association, Dr. Paul Crooks, sharing some vital information with regards to making sure that you know if your household has COVID and you have to quarantine, then you need to make sure that you isolate your pet as well, quarantine your pet as well, because it's quite possible that dogs have been getting COVID-19.